If I was being cynical about it, I was saying he was giving different messages to different audiences, and he was talking tough on Russia when he was in Poland, and he was talking nice to the Russians when he was in Germany. And I think that there is a problem of consistency in Mr. Trump's messaging. He does say different things at different times to different audiences, and that devalues this very powerful currency, which is the words of the United States President. So I worry a bit about that. I'm very glad that Vice President Pence went to Ukraine. I'm glad about Secretary of State Tillerson's travels. These are all good things, and I think we are repairing some of the damage that was done to the transatlantic relationship during the campaign and in the early months of the administration, but there are still an awful lot of question marks. I think the 3Cs initiative is basically a gimmick. It's a good gimmick. I'm in favour of it. It's a way of getting together a lot of countries that have some common security interests and common interests in logistics and infrastructure development. But the European Union is by far the most important political and economic entity, not just in the continent of Europe, but almost in the world. 520 million people, are nearly $20 trillion GDP if you include the wider European economic area. And so I think this is always going to have to be the top priority, not just for Belarus, but for everybody. I think that Brexit is very bad for Britain, and it will be bad for a lot of other countries too. It may paradoxically turn out to be quite good for the core EU, because it removes an obstacle to integration. So we now see the Franco-German integration motor firing up and running very fast, and we're going to see close cooperation on fiscal and monetary policy, on banking supervision, but also on increasingly on things like defence. And so this is all the things that the United Kingdom used to try and block, because we felt it was getting out of balance, now are going ahead. Now that's maybe good for France and Germany and for the Netherlands and other countries that really want integration. It's going to be tricky for the Swedes and for the Danes and the Poles and the Czechs and the other countries that are not in the Eurozone and not going to join the Eurozone, because I think you're really getting a two-speed Europe now, with the first-class passengers with the French-German compartment going ahead very fast, and the second-class passengers just having to go along with whatever the first-class passengers decide. And I think that creates tensions, and Britain's withdrawal from the European Union unbalances the leadership. So it means that the Swedes and Danes and Poles and Czechs have no big country that they can look to who instinctively shares their priorities, and I think that's going to be a problem. I think that's a different divide. I think that you see that's really a north-south divide, that the North European countries and the East European countries basically are worried now, and when I say north, I include France in that. There's a widespread understanding, including in countries like Austria and Belgium even, who used not to be worried about Russian propaganda at all. They now think information warfare is a real thing. Russia's doing it. They've done it in other countries in Europe. They may do it to us. The holdouts really, I would say, are Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece and Cyprus, those 5 southern countries where there's still a deep unwillingness to engage in the idea that there's a Russian propaganda threat. But I think that it's not enough, but I think the tide is definitely turning. I'm very sceptical. First of all, the problem I don't think is RT. I think there's a danger we hugely overestimate the importance of RT because it's in English and it's easily accessible. I'm much more worried about the Russian propaganda we don't notice than the Russian propaganda we do notice. So I think that the first stage we actually need to do is to measure the reach and impact of Russian information warfare in our societies, and we need to do that systematically with quantitative and qualitative data, and analyse the market for information the same way as we analyse the market for toothpaste or shampoo or chocolate, and find out how people are consuming, why they're consuming, what impact it has. For example, but we need to start on the basis of hard evidence, and it's no good just putting stuff up in the airwaves and hoping people will listen to it. We need to think what sort of information will get into the Russian information space, preferably stuff that is so good that the Russians will share it themselves on social media. So I'm much keen if I can get one 5-minute video that goes on YouTube and everybody is sharing it on Kontakte. That is much better than a 24-hour Nastoyaщее время sort of program which nobody's really watching. Now, I don't know, maybe we need a Russian language television channel. I don't know. I'm neutral on these questions, so I want to see the data. And until we have data, I'm not going to make any firm decisions about what works and what doesn't.